All right. So a quick overview of what we'll be doing tonight. We're going to be covering just a little bit of the thought process theology behind the course and things that you see on your screen, a little bit of branding, talking about content and making a plan. I'm going to give you some resources too. And so we'll also have a group activity or two. And if you will, I just wanted to say some group norms. Like I said, this is low pressure. You're welcome to have your camera on or off. And if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or just shout at me, whatever. You can post a question in the chat, and Charlotte will be on in a minute. Charlotte is here. Yay. She's going to be monitoring that. And so if you have a question, there will be some times that I'll pause and allow space for that. And yeah, like I said, I'll be making this available to you afterward. So when we say evangelism, since this is
all they were like, everybody give around. Say,
what was that? Does someone have a question? Okay, so when we say evangelism, we're talking about sharing the good news, which is the love of Jesus, right? And so foundationally, this is sort of the message that we carry in our hearts as Christians and as organizations. And when it comes to getting that message out, that's all about communication. It's fundamental to our faith. And so learning some tools for carrying that message helps to unify our mission and just helps us to be better communicators and better evangelists. So when we have some good communications going on, that helps us grow our congregations and strengthens us as a community and equips us. So when we're talking about communications, that big message that we have to share with the world, it comes to the life of the church. It means a lot of different things, right? It could be doing a newsletter. It could be doing social media, websites, emailing volunteers, texting people, keeping people on a schedule. So when we're talking about communications, it's more than just transmitting information, though. It's the art of connection. We're trying to connect people. And with that, it means that we need to have some kind of central identity that we kind of go off of. And that is often called a brand. And in the context of a church, it really helps us to find that unity when we have something that's foundational that we know can define who we are as an organization and a church. It helps people really to trust you and provides focus for your mission, and it's that unifying piece. And it's also a process. And I would just want to say, there's no perfect way to do communications. No one has it figured out completely. It's really just trying and seeing the results and trying again, maybe in a new way. And so it's finding a rhythm that works for you, something that you can manage, and maybe getting some help sometimes. So do we have any questions so far? All right. So I want to talk a little bit more about this piece that is the promise. So when we're talking about branding, there's many ways to define what that is, right? It could be the way your parishioners perceive you. It could be the systems, your contracts, your values, social groupings, your visuals, but really it's all of that. And there's a good article that was shared through Episcopal Communicators recently by Ken Mosesian that said it this way, that brand is nothing more than a promise. It's the promise that you're making to the people who see you in the world. And so this promise it's presented in a variety of ways through visual cues, phrases, your behaviors. And without taking the steps to solidify what your promise is at the very foundation, then it's up to others to define who you are, and they will. And so it's important to kind of have that as one of your essential tools, is to know where you're coming from and what promise you are making in the world. And so you can think of it sort of like a relationship. When people don't know you, or you don't know someone, you kind of approach with skepticism. You don't really know if they're going to do what they say they're going to do, right? And so when you deliver on your promises authentically, you start to build trust. And that's when people come back, and that's when they want to kind of see more of you, and they want to attend your things that you put out. And so it's like this. I'll put it this way. If a big part of your identity is being welcoming to all people, so you have to put out some content about that. So if you can put out some content about, say, Pride Month or the Juneteenth, things like that. And that is you kind of delivering on that promise. And so if your promise is that you like to teach the ways of Jesus, then you put out some educational content, you talk about that, and that's you delivering on that. And it also goes into, like I said, the visuals around that. So you can sort of ask around, what do other people think that your promise is? What do you think your promise is? And this is just a starting point. Okay, so you can gather input and from the staff, your lay leaders, and anyone who kind of sees the things that your church does. And that's part of the process of sort of defining the identity of your church and organization. And from that can come some really good communications. So let's take just a minute, everyone, we'll do this on our own. Just take about 3 to 5 minutes to think about this question. What do people count on your church to deliver? So just think about that and maybe write a couple of things down. All right. How'd it go? Let's share. Does anyone want to share what they thought? It's kind of a hard question to answer.
This is Sarah from St. Mary's. It is a hard question to answer because what I hear you asking is, what is your church identity? And my church, its identity is worship.
Mm-hmm.
And so primarily what people count on us to deliver is worship opportunities, Sunday, Tuesday evening, and then morning prayer, Monday through Friday. In addition to some additional evensong, that type of thing. The other thing that we're known for is our community meeting space. So people count on us to share our space with different groups in the community, which we do. And that's part of the reason that we have the facilities that we have, was to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But it to me, the question really does get into, what is the identity of our church? You know, how are we church in the world? And that's sort of a sobering question, because a lot of times the answer isn't what you would hope it is. In terms of, you know, maybe our church doesn't do a lot of outreach, and you know, maybe that's something we need to work on. So it's a good question to self-identify and note places where we can improve.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that you'll find is that it may be different for different people. Maybe one person counts on you a lot for the worship, and one person really likes the community meetings. And so it can vary, but actually kind of boiling down that identity to just one or two things can be very helpful in focusing the mission like you're talking about. Does anyone else have something they thought during that activity?
This is Tony. I was thinking, when you say, what do people count on your church to deliver? Are those members of your church or external people that view our church from the outside?
It could be either one. So you could take it either way. If you wanted to see, kind of think about, what do you think your parishioners think, or what do people who may not be as familiar think?
Right. And then you have to consider, is there any congruency? What's the similarity and what's the disconnect?
Yeah.
This was also a really hard question for me, because I think everybody counts on the church to deliver something different. But the things that came to mind for the church that I work for specifically, where I think I thought of our mission, which is to know and love God, and to serve him in all actions, and to bring others to his saving love. So I think that one of the ways that we do that really well is with our outreach programs. And in my communications, I do tend to focus a lot on those, even though I would say that the central thing that brings everybody in the church together is the worship. Something else that came to mind is tradition. I think that a lot of the parishioners expect me to deliver tradition in my communications, and that can be difficult sometimes when you're working at a church that was started in 1836. So it's all about finding balance, honoring tradition, and moving forward at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sarah.
This is Tom Scott with the Transfiguration Church of Bat Cave. And if you were to ask the community as well as congregation, I think you would hear a lot about our hospitality and our missions. And I think we're pretty well known for those two areas.
Yeah. Yeah, and often it's not just one single thing. And sometimes you can sort of zoom it out a little bit and say, okay, they count on us for worship and they count on us for our outreach, but you can sort of take a step back and say, what is the central sort of goal of both of those things together? And that might help to condense it down into something that sort of gets your identity. And so, it's not just, it doesn't have to be just one single thing. And I'll share. Does anyone else want to share before we move on? Okay.
Putting on what Tom was just saying, I put down spiritual growth.
Okay.
As, yeah, we do outreach. Worship.
Yeah, spiritual growth. That's a good one. See, y'all know what you're doing. You have some great answers. All right. So, like I said, this is a question. If you are looking to do some of that branding work, you can take that different places, take it to the vestry, just see what people say, and that can help you. So we're going to look at this other piece, which is the process. So one of the things that comes from having the identity, this is sort of some of the elements of the identity. So it's obviously it's more than, just the one thing. It's all of the things together. So some of the elements of the brand identity that come out of it are things like your logo, your colors, tagline, voice and tone, some of the fonts that you use. All of these things are really good to define when you're doing some of this work of trying to brand and get that identity so that you can unify your mission. And some of the nuts and bolts of that process is actually doing an audit of what you're already doing. So you can ask yourself, what kind of content am I producing now? What does my website look like? What kind of visuals am I using? What colors do I use a lot? And so some of those things can be helpful. And also with the content, what are you putting out? Do you do a lot of events? Do you celebrate birthdays? Do you put out some content about your history? Do you do educational things? There are a lot of options. And then the other question to ask in the sort of auditing process is, where am I putting it? What are the channels that people respond to well? Are a lot of people on social media? Do more people maybe read an email newsletter or a newsletter sent through the mail? Are a lot of people looking at your website? Do more people tend to look at a bulletin board or just listen to verbal announcements and things like that? So if you ask yourself some of these questions, then you can start to see, you can gather that information and sort of make that into the identity formation process of doing the branding. And I have a slide. Here we go. This slide is from the diocese. And this is sort of showing what I'm calling our promise. It's sort of our tagline. And during the rebranding process, I wasn't here yet. I came in October. Whoops, hit the wrong button, sorry. But what they kind of did was change into really kind of solidify the Western North Carolina and kind of reflecting the spirit of Western North Carolina while retaining elements of the Anglican tradition. So you can see the old seal has the contrasting colors and still has the old Celtic cross, and the new has the color scheme of the blues, whites, gold that reveals the natural beauty of the Blue Ridge Mountains and kind of the awe of a sunrise over the mountains. And the seal incorporates the Anglican tradition with the Celtic cross centered on a blooming dogwood, which is the flower, state flower. And then you also have the rustic wooden cross on the mountaintop, which you see a lot around here. So also on the website, we incorporate some of the natural beauty of the mountains and things like that. So it's just sort of, that's what we're trying to reflect. Like, we're in Western North Carolina, we're part of the Anglican tradition and walk in the way of Jesus and change the world. So does anyone have questions or anything at this point? All right. So this piece is also part of the process, and this is about making a plan. So as you're doing sort of that audit work and asking yourself, what am I already producing and all of that, you can think about your content. Again, what is your church up to? And are there some untapped stories among your parishioners? And you can relate that back to what your promise is. So this step is kind of what you will do next once you have that information that you've collected. And so you think about that. And like I said, this is a process. You just try and keep trying and move forward and try new things and see how it lands, and then keep doing it if it works. And so once you get some of that content, try to connect that back to your promise and just stay focused. And then it also helps to create a timeline, which also you really want to make that doable and consistent. So if you are putting out, for example, if you do parishioner birthdays, are you going to do those birthdays for the month of May? Or would you do it for a week or a quarter? Whatever you decide, just be consistent with that. And also same thing with events. Are you going to put out, here's a list of our events for the month, or do you want to do 2 weeks ahead of time and post it 2 weeks out and then 1 week out? So as long as you are consistent, that's really the key with that. And the same thing goes for your channels. And that's about talking about social media or email. Like I was saying before, what you kind of say, what am I going to put in my newsletter? What am I going to put in maybe the bulletin or social media? And then you also really need to be consistent there. That's part of building trust with people. And so have events on your website and events in the newsletter. You want to just make sure that you're giving a fair space to everything. And so that people can count on the one space. If they only read the newsletter, you want to be sure they can count on knowing all of the events from that place. So like I said, it's really up to you to sort of decide how to put the information out there, but consistency is really important because it builds trust with people. And so the last thing, assign a person. Someone has to make it happen. Understand that a lot of administrators are the one person that make things happen, but you don't have to do it alone. Try to share the load if you can. See if you can, ask someone to help you, or maybe get a content calendar and schedule things. That can really help if you're doing a lot of the content creation stuff. So encourage you to ask for help, because it's not all, it doesn't have to be all up to just a one person. All right, any questions about this piece or comments or anything? Okay. Now we're going to do this group activity. I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms, and we're going to take about maybe 10 to 15 minutes to discuss these two things. So the two words that you need to remember are content and resources. And so the question that I'm asking is, what content is most popular with your audience? And what resources would make your job as a communicator? So content and resources, and I'm going to put you in some rooms. See you back in about 10 to 15 minutes.
This really doesn't apply to me.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just gonna have,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
It's going well, Rachel. They're still talking a little bit, but they're starting to wrap up. There were some awkward pauses at the very end, so
Okay.
good timing.
Okay, good. Welcome back, everybody. I think I made just one breakout room, so sorry about that, but I hope you had a good conversation anyway. Does anyone want to share with me what you had to say or any aha moments that you had while talking to others? Since you were all in the same room, that's all good. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to share with you guys is some resources and talk about this for just a second. So I know for me, one of the things that helps me out is being able to have places to go to find some information that I need, as well as having some kind of group to support some of the work and just ask questions to or anything. And so I highly recommend checking out the Episcopal Communicators either through their website, and they also have a Facebook group. So just know that you are definitely not alone and you're able to ask questions to them or just float ideas. And that's a really wonderful thing to be able to do in some of these roles that feel a little bit lonely sometimes. And also our diocesan website, you can download the seal. The new seal is right on our homepage. You just scroll down to the bottom, and the resources page has a lot of good things for administrators or lay leadership, clergy, liturgy and worship things. So check that out. And also, I added this link here if you ever need the Episcopal Shield for something that you're creating. There's the link right there on the National Episcopal Church website. So I will be sharing all of this with you. So no need to write that down, but you can if you want to. And then a couple of helpful articles. The article that I mentioned that had the question about brand as a promise, that is the first article there. And then a content strategy article that helped me out is that one. And if you scroll down in that article, it shows you sort of a method of kind of breaking out your content into different keystone topics, and that can help you with getting organized and making your plan. So this is it. This is me, and if you need me, I am always here for you. If you have questions or need help or listening ear, feel free to email me or give me a call. And yeah, does anyone have questions before we wrap up tonight? We still have a little bit of time. Questions, comments, anything?
Rachel, do they have access to Constant Contact? Is that something that's affordable for churches? In the breakout room, they talked a lot about how they're having a hard time reaching people with the newsletters. And I was just wondering, we have pretty good luck at the diocese with Constant Contact, and we can track it really well. If it's opened, who clicks on what? Is that something that is a resource to churches?
Yeah, that there is a cost to using Constant Contact. Not sure of the exact breakdown of that, but the thing that we discovered is that you really need to verify your website through Constant Contact. And that's something that I'm going to go over in the newsletters workshop. It's a little bit technical. So if you have a IT person or someone that you can reach out to ask about verifying your email website, there's a term for it that is escaping me right now, but you have to verify. It's a technical SSI, something like that. And so that lets the email service that you're sending to know that you are actually a real person sending it or a real organization instead of spam, because a lot of emails that get sent through those services end up in the other folder or the spam folder. So that's something to look at if you're having trouble getting into people's inboxes.
We use Constant Contact at St. John, and I believe it is $70 a year for the cheapest. I don't know if it's the cheapest package, but the package that we use lets you have up to 500 contacts. And I think it's unlimited emails that you can send a year, and it's $70 a year. That's all.
Cool.
Another thing with Constant Contact is if you sign up and you use Augusta Cannon's email address, you save 15% your first 3 months.
Oh, that's good to know.
Absolutely. Rachel, I'll just say thank you for putting this together. And I think it's going to be a very helpful process to go through for all of us to share with one another our experiences and our opportunities as we try to communicate and reach as many can. And we thank you for time and energy in putting this together.
Well, thank you for attending, and I hope that it empowers everyone and kind of enriches, hopefully, the work that you're doing. And I'm going to switch this slide. Here are our other workshops. Sorry, it ended. There we go. Okay. So here's what's coming up, and each month it's the second Thursday. So if you need help with any of those things, these are also links to sign up for those workshops, and I'll be putting out some information about them. So I'm going to leave that right there. Does anyone else have any other questions? All right. Well, if all hearts are at peace, then we will end for tonight, and I'll be following up with everyone, sending these things to you. So please, again, please reach out to me if you have feedback, further questions, comments, anything like that. And I look forward to seeing you again in an upcoming workshop.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rachel.
Time to get out of here.